Alright guys, we are back at Mike's Coffee Shop, but today I'm not here to build anything. Another IT company came in over the weekend and installed a new access switch for the cafe. They also moved our guest wireless access point to a new switch. I came in to do a quick health check, and before I could even start, I saw this. Something is connected to this network that I wasn't expecting. So come with me and see if you can find it. Before we go looking for the problem, let me quickly bring you up to speed on what changed. If you followed along with the original Mike's Coffee build, you'll notice we now have an access switch serving the cafe area. Fast Ethernet 0/11 on our multi-layer switch connects directly to Fast Ethernet 0/11 on the cafe access switch. That link is configured as a trunk, allowing VLAN 30 and VLAN 99. Remember, VLAN 30 is our guest network. VLAN 99 is our management VLAN. Our guest wireless access point has also been moved over to this new switch. The access point connects to Gigabit Internet 0/1, and that interface is configured as an access port in VLAN 30. We also have two network drops here in the cafe seating area. These are floor jacks. Floor jack 1 terminates on Fast Ethernet 0/1, and floor jack 2 terminates on Fast Ethernet 0/2. Both interfaces are access ports in VLAN 30. So, pretty straightforward. So now that you know what changed, let's get into this switch and start our health check. First, let's take a quick look at our interfaces. Our uplink is up, our access point is connected, and our cafe ports are active. Let's verify our uplink. Fast Ethernet 0/11 is trunking, and VLANs 30 and 99 are being carried across the link. Good. Now, let's make sure our access interfaces are where we expect them. VLAN 30 is present and our cafe interfaces are assigned correctly. But we still have this. Our switch is reporting a native VLAN mismatch on one of our customer-facing interfaces. Our side is assigned to VLAN 30, but whatever is connected on the other end is reporting VLAN 1. That's strange. Something is connected to one of our cafe floor jacks. Okay, I could start guessing what it might be, but why guess? Let's go see what's actually connected. Let's take a walk out to the cafe. Alright, take a look around. Anything stand out to you? There's one table I want to take a closer look at. Let's get a little closer. Ah, there it is. Now things are starting to make sense. We've got a small unmanaged network switch underneath the table. 3 of these laptops are connected to it. But that by itself isn't what concerns me. Look at these other 2 connections. One cable from the switch goes into our first floor jack, and another cable from that same switch goes into our second floor jack. So this little switch now has 2 separate connections back into our network. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why would anybody do this? And yeah, once you understand networking, it looks pretty silly. But as a network engineer, you're going to run into situations like this. And I don't think anybody here is trying to do anything malicious. They're just trying to get connected. Maybe this group brought a small switch because they wanted wire connection for several laptops. Then they saw 2 available Ethernet jacks and figured, if one connection is good, maybe 2 is better. Maybe they think they'll get more bandwidth. Maybe they think the second connection provides redundancy. Maybe they think if one cable fails, the other one will keep them online. What they're not thinking about is layer 2 loops. They're not thinking about spanning tree. They're just trying to get their laptops online. And that's something you have to remember as a network engineer. You can't design your network assuming that everybody connecting to it understands networking. All right, now that we've physically seen what's connected, our topology has changed. I'm going to use CDP to see what our switch has discovered directly connected to it. CDP stands for Cisco Discovery Protocol. It's a layer 2 discovery protocol Cisco devices use to exchange information with directly connected neighbors. We can see the neighboring device, the local interface where we discovered it, and even the interface on the neighboring device. So in simple terms, CDP helps us answer the question, what's connected directly to this interface? One important note, the little switch underneath the table is supposed to represent a small, inexpensive, unmanaged switch. A typical unmanaged switch probably isn't going to be running Cisco Discovery Protocol. Here in Packet Tracer, however, I'm using a Cisco 2960 to represent that device. So we're going to see some Cisco specific behavior in this simulation that we might not see from a cheap unmanaged switch in the real world. These three laptops are connected to the switch, and one side of that switch connects back to our first VLAN 30 floor jack. The other side connects back through our second VLAN 30 floor jack. We now have a redundant layer 2 path back into our access switch. In other words, we've created a layer 2 loop. So let's see how the network responded. There it is. Spanning Tree detected the redundant layer 2 path and placed one of these interfaces into a blocking state. Traffic can continue using this path, while Spanning Tree prevents traffic from using the redundant path. Without Spanning Tree, a layer 2 loop can allow broadcasts and other frames to circulate continuously. Unlike an IP packet, an Ethernet frame doesn't have a TTL, a time to live that eventually kills it. That can consume network resources and potentially result in a broadcast storm. But that isn't happening here. Spanning Tree saw the loop and protected us. So, are we done? No. Spanning Tree protected the network, but look at what we're still allowing. A completely unauthorized switch is connected to customer-facing ports and participating in our layer 2 topology. These are supposed to be edge ports. They are intended for end devices, laptops, PCs, things like that, not switches. To understand how we can protect these ports, we first need to understand something called a BPDU. You see, BPDU stands for Bridge Protocol Data Unit. These are special messages switches exchanged as part of Spanning Tree. Think of them as switches sharing information about the layer 2 topology, things like the root bridge and the paths available through the network. Between switches, receiving BPDUs is normal, but Fast Ethernet 1 and 2 lead to customer-facing floor jacks. A normal laptop doesn't participate in Spanning Tree and start sending BPDUs, but a switch does. So if one of these edge ports suddenly starts receiving BPDUs, that's a very good indication that a switch has been connected where one doesn't belong. And that's exactly what BPDU Guard allows us to protect against. Let's protect both of our customer-facing floor jack interfaces. First, I'm enabling PortFast. PortFast tells Spanning Tree that these are edge ports intended for end devices, allowing them to transition to forwarding without going through the normal Spanning Tree conversion process. This tells us that it's important to only enable PortFast on ports connected to end devices. You should never enable it on links between switches because doing so could increase the risk of switching loops if the network isn't designed properly. And this is the command we're really interested in, BPDU Guard. We're essentially telling the switch, if this edge port ever receives a BPDU, something is connected here that shouldn't be. Shut it down. And there it is. The interface received a BPDU from our unauthorized switch, and BPDU Guard immediately disabled the port. Check this out. The port has been shut down. Let's verify this. And there it is. Both ports are now error-disabled. Before BPDU Guard, Spanning Tree protected us from the loop by blocking the redundant path, but the unauthorized switch remained connected. Now, when one of these edge ports receive a BPDU, BPDU Guard shuts the interface down. A switch does not belong here. Now, I'm not just going to bring these interfaces back up. BPDU Guard shut them down for a reason. First, we fixed the actual problem. We removed the unauthorized switch from our network. Now that the offending device has been removed, we can manually recover our interfaces. A shutdown followed by a no shutdown resets the ports. Perfect. They are no longer error disabled, and because nothing is currently connected to those floor jacks, they simply show not connected. And notice, we didn't remove BPDU Guard. The protection is still there. We simply fixed the physical problem and recovered the interfaces. Our interfaces have recovered, but there's still one more thing I want to test real quickly. Remember, these are still customer-facing floor jacks. BPDU Guard shouldn't prevent a customer from connecting a normal end device. So let's test it. Instead of connecting another switch, I'm going to connect a normal laptop directly to the floor jack. Perfect. The laptop connects normally. That's exactly what we want. BPDU Guard isn't shutting down the port simply because somebody plugged something into it. This laptop is an end device. It isn't participating in Spanning Tree and sending BPDUs, so BPDU Guard has nothing to react to. Our network is back to the way it should be. And this is why I wanted to show you this scenario. Nobody was attacking Mike's Coffee. Nobody was intentionally trying to take down the network. It was simply a group of people trying to get their laptops connected. Spanning Tree protected us from the layer 2 loop, and BPDU Guard allowed us to protect our edge ports from switches that shouldn't be there in the first place. As a network engineer, you can't control what somebody might plug into a public-facing network jack, but you can control how your network responds when they do. And that's the difference between simply building a network and building one that's prepared for the real world. And that is it. Today wasn't about configuring a network from scratch. It was about seeing how a network engineer approaches something unexpected, follows the clues, understands what's happening at layer 2, and then puts the right protection in place so the same problem doesn't happen again. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.